You touched on some recent research into the brain and how adults learn in your book. Why do you think that some learning and development teams may not have taken that on board?
Well, I think that in many cases, even if someone's had teacher training, it's quite possible that many teachers and trainers are actually not very well versed in even the long-standing learning theories, let alone the more recent developments. And in some cases, you could even say that the theory they have been given is very flimsy and perhaps even sort of pseudo-scientific. In many cases, people just use their instincts or follow good best practice models, which is fine, but they don't necessarily understand the theoretical underpinning of what they're doing. More dangerous is the fact that if you did get a particular good understanding at some stage in the past, that you haven't kept up to date with what's changed in more recently. Now, historically, most of the models that underlie teaching and learning come from psychology, where if you like, it's very hard, like with any social science, to come up with very, very hard evidence. And certainly it's very hard to understand the mechanics of why something should be true. One of the benefits over the last 20 years of the capabilities like doing MRI scans and so on the human brain is that people have been able to experiment much more completely in terms of finding out what actually happens in the brain to make learning happen. And it isn't necessarily that what's coming out of neuroscience actually is particularly contradictory of what we knew before or what we felt we knew before. Although sometimes it is, sometimes it is slightly different. But it's providing much more hard evidence. So I think in many cases, why aren't people taking it on board? It's because they just don't know it's happening. And I think that, unfortunately, not as many people as should undertake enough continuing professional development, as you would do in other professions. If you were an architect, for example, you would be expected to undertake continuing professional development and to keep up to date with developments in. If you're an architect, that would be with engineering, with new materials, with new ways of doing electrics and plumbing and what have you. You'd be having to keep up to date with those because you'd soon be otherwise ineffective in your job. Well, I think a learning development professional has every bit of the same responsibility.
Excellent. Thanks for that explanation, Clive. Your book actually includes 4 contexts for learning. Can you explain a little bit more about your thoughts behind that?
Well, essentially, those 4 contexts are just my way of separating the different ways that people can learn. Not that real life is anything like as distinct as that. For me, it seemed that there were 4. It was helpful to distinguish between those 4 different categories. The obvious one of formal learning, I don't think anybody would have any quarrel with that, is just a question of something that can be categorized as a course. It's wrapped up with a curriculum, it has objective and assessment, it has some sort of formal tuition and formal materials and so on. We all understand what that is. But there's an awful lot of what I call, or in fact what often called in education in particular, non-formal activities as well, which fall outside the bounds of a course, but actually are quite common practice in organisations in terms of developing people for the future. So they have a future orientation, in other words, a developmental orientation. And that can be anything from learning on the job, coaching, all sorts of materials that organisations provide in terms of videos and websites and white papers and sending people to conferences and all those sorts of things, which are quite routinely part of the way we develop people for the future. So I think it was important that we are able to distinguish those. And we have to distinguish those from the third category, which is learning on demand, because that's a very different time context. Rather than, if you like, trained to develop for the future. What you're doing is essentially saying, I've got a problem right now. I need to carry out a particular activity, and I don't know how to do it. So I need some immediate help. I mean, some people might say that's not even learning in many cases. What you're actually doing is getting information. Certainly you may never retain that, and you may never have any intention of retaining it, but nevertheless it's a very important part of the overall architecture that you provide the right resources, whether that's content or whether it's people, to support people for getting knowledge as and when they need it. The biggest category of all is probably that learning that is not, if you like, consciously proactive in any way. It's not something that you're deliberately doing, with learning in inverted commas as its primary aim. And that is actually reflecting back and learning from what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. What you might call experiential learning. Now, experiential learning happens whether you like it or not. It is just a natural part of living. That we soon learn that if something isn't working, that we adjust it. Even if we don't reflect upon it, we will change our behaviour almost automatically. But on the other hand, the more conscious effort you put into reflecting on your experiences and on the experiences of others that you observe, the quicker and the more powerfully you will learn from experience. And so that's a vital category in itself, experiential learning, which can actually be fostered and encouraged. You don't necessarily just have to leave it to happen by itself, but it's a very important fourth element.
You also took a look at these contexts from two different perspectives, your top-down and bottom-up, which you mentioned earlier on. Could you explain a little bit more about those?
Well, I think that the concept of informal learning became rather confused for me, as I was saying earlier. And one of the aspects of informal learning that is confused is the idea that informal learning is always a bottom-up activity. In other words, it comes from ordinary employees themselves. So they take it upon themselves to share knowledge with each other, or to reflect on their experience, perhaps with a blog, or they undertake some activity in a social network or whatever. But that is really just part of it, because a lot of those learning activities which are not a course are actually determined as part of the strategic management of learning development in an organisation. So pretty well all of the four categories that I mentioned, whether that's formal courses or it's all those sort of non-formal proactive ways of learning, or it's on-demand learning, or it's learning through experience, can be dictated, if that's the right word, or schemed out from above by management and made to happen because management wants to. It's very important for management that people are able to do their jobs properly, otherwise the organisation can't fulfil its objectives. But on the other hand, it's also true to say that employees within an organisation have a huge incentive to do their jobs well, not only so they can keep their existing job, not be fired, or be considered for promotion or recruitment to another firm, but because actually developing mastery, if you like, is one of the most motivating things that we can do. We love to become good at doing something. So there's a lot of incentive to make learning happen from the bottom up as well as the top down. And as I show in the model in the book, any one of those four categories that I mentioned earlier could be approached both from a top-down angle and from a bottom-up. The important thing is to recognise how to get that balance right in your particular organisation.
Excellent, thanks, Clive. So how do you expect this model to be used in organisations?
Well, I am one of those people who likes to create systems and models, but I'm not stupid enough to believe that that's how real life works. People don't typically sit down and scheme something out using the guidelines that have been laid out in some sort of formal training or in a book, but they can certainly influence your thinking. And what I would hope is that if somebody was really found the model useful for them while reading the book is that they certainly consciously try and use that model to help them in looking at the strategy for learning for their particular population they're responsible for the next time they do it. Perhaps at least once try and look at that consciously. And probably if you find that useful and actually it helps you to scheme out your strategy formally on subsequent occasions. But I have to be realistic and say that what you really hope is that some of the key insights that people might gain from the model that they can apply in a more free and imaginative way, just as an adaptation of their existing practice. Either way, I would be very pleased.